Welcome back to another episode of the Next Level Minds podcast. My name is Chris Chapman, and I am your host. And if this is your first time tuning in, then this is a podcast dedicated to those who want to reach a next level in their business, personal, or career life. Every other week, I'm blessed to sit down with a fully qualified guest, entrepreneur, content creator, or mover and shaker in their industry and really walk through their story, how they've gotten from point A to point B and overcame various adversities along the way. Now, if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that I have a vision and mission to impact over 1 million people by helping them reach a next level. So, if you have not done this already, please take the time to subscribe to Next Level Minds, share this episode with a family member, friend, or colleague, and leave a review on Apple Podcast or YouTube and let me know what you think. Now, on to today's episode, which is part of a series I do called Motivation Monday, where I talk through a variety of topics centered around personal development, really with the main goal of getting people excited, pumped up, educated, inspired for the week ahead. And we've talked about a number of different topics, personal development, goal setting, habits, mindset, visualization, failures, a whole list of great topics. So you can go back and listen to a lot of different themes and topics. But today we're talking about some just basic level finances. And I know I've shared finances on the show before, but it has been a couple years since I've done that. And I've recently got a lot of different DMs and just questions come into my inbox of people just asking some very important but fairly basic finance questions on how to set up a budget or what to do with their money in the stock market. And I am no financial advisor, so I'm not going to be giving you advice or managing your money, but I am going to be talking about, what I do and what has worked from a general standpoint. So this is not financial advice. Take this with a grain of salt, but this is things that have worked very, very well for me over the last 6-7 years, and things that I've heard from probably 100 plus different multimillionaires to do that they have done to get to a multi-million-dollar level at 35, 40, 50, 60 years old. And I've hopefully following in their footsteps with these habits, routines, and behaviors from a financial standpoint. So I wanted to take the time to just share some of this so that I can honestly answer a lot of these DMs that I've been getting in one podcast. So to go into this, the first thing you really have to do when it comes to your finances, in my opinion, is to budget your money, because I think it's important to know where your dollars are going. You may have heard this in some other podcasts, because I've definitely heard this on a podcast, but I believe you should treat every dollar like a soldier, and you need to know where your soldiers are going in this case. And so I think it's extremely important to set up a budget so you can track where your money's going. There are apps to do this. There are the classic pen and paper. There are spreadsheets. But it's very important to know this, right? And I know, looking at my budget, exactly how much per month goes into my mortgage, Spotify, phone bill, car insurance, my dog, energy and water bill, groceries, gas and car, going out to eat, alcohol, random stuff, entertainment and travel, health. Like, I know exactly how much per month and even per week is going into these categories. And it's very freeing knowing this information. I personally like to use Google Sheets because you can go on your computer or your phone to input the information. And so a lot of times I'll go out to eat or buy a few beers or go get gas, whatever you're doing from a spending money standpoint. And I'll just go on my phone. If I got $50 worth of gas, I'll go into my Google Sheet and just under gas and car, I'll put $50. And now I know, okay, well, this week I spent $50 on gas, right? And it's just very easy to do that. Now, it takes a little bit to get in the habit of actually doing that, but I like having it on Google Sheets. I've made this budget template for a lot of people, and it's helped a lot of people out. So if you do want this budget template, hit me up on Instagram, Chris Chapchap, and for $100, I can give you this awesome budget template. And for $500, I will gladly give you this budget template and then walk you through exactly how to set up a budget that works for you, right? And the reason I'm charging for this is because it takes me a lot of time to actually create a customized template for you, and even more time for me to actually walk you through, right? I used to do it for free, but so many people hit me up that they got a lot of value out of this, and I'm like, you know what? This takes me a lot of time. I think I deserve a little something out of taking my time to do this. So budgeting your money, extremely imperative. Apps, spreadsheets, there's numerous ways to do this, but you got to know where your dollars are going. Second most important thing, I think, with your finances is to increase your income. Unfortunately, with inflation and taxes and all these other things, you're going to have a very hard time getting ahead in life if you're just continuing to make the same amount of money year after year after year after year, because unfortunately things are going to go up in price, taxes are going to go up, and if you're making the same amount of money every single year and inflation's going up 5-10% like it is right now, you're actually going to be in a deficit. And so I got some awesome advice that I've shared on the show before. I got this advice in 2018, right after I graduated. I was talking to this guy at a happy hour. He walked up to me. We started talking. He's like, man, I can tell you're a young hustler. You're going to go far in life. We started talking for about an hour. He gave me some great advice. He was very successful. And he said, listen, if you want to get ahead, increase your income by a minimum of 10% per year, because that's going to match inflation. And two, if you continue to live below your means, which we'll touch on in a little bit, you're going to be able to save more and more and more money every single year. So I've lived by that since I heard that in 2018, and made it a focus to increase my income at a bare minimum of at least 10% per year. And so far, I've increased it more than 10% every single year for the last 4 or 5 years. Now I'm in sales. So with sales, you can honestly control how much money you make. You sell more accounts, you sell more business, you make more money. But for those that maybe aren't in sales and don't have that full control over your income, I would suggest working to do all you can to get bonuses, to maybe get some sort of commission structure, or even some sort of side hustle that's going to give you an extra 10% per year in income, because trust me, that's going to pay off significantly down the road. And another thing you can do, and I made a whole episode on this, on how to increase your income. You can go back and listen to it. It's another Motivation Monday episode. I've also done 2 or 3 speeches on this topic. So if you've graduated Clemson in the last year or two and you're listening to this, you might have heard this speech, because I've definitely talked about it in a business class at Clemson. But quite simply, if you want to increase your income every year, some of the things you can do is, number 1, increase your skill set, right? Find 2 or 3 skill sets that make a lot of money, like sales, communication, leadership. Those are 3 skills: sales, communication, leadership, that pay a lot of money if you're good at it. And go hard investing into those skill sets, courses, YouTube videos, podcasts, learning those things. Become undeniably great at whatever you're doing. So whether you're entry-level employee or a VP, become the absolute best employee you can be, and you're going to receive an ROI from doing that. And get in the right environment where you're at a company or you have a business that allows you to do this. Right? So I think that's unique, right? Getting that income increase to at least 10% per year, getting that income to, a next level, quote unquote, right? And I think that's extremely important to get that to a next level. And speaking of a next level, I want to talk about Magic Mind, because I've honestly been having a lot of brain fog and a lack of focus and just having a tired feeling. I've tried some caffeine pills. I've tried, sleeping with, longer hours, 6, 7, 8 hour plus. And I've just kind of still been feeling this. And I was introduced recently to Magic Mind, which is really the world's first mental performance shot that's completely all natural, because it has matcha, which gives you energy, adaptogens, which helps you relax, honey, which keeps you happy, nootropics, which helps with your focus. It's got my favorite ingredient, which is in the matcha, which is L-theanine, which really increases your focus and attention. And trust me, I can tell a big difference in my productivity. I can tell a difference in my energy levels. I can really just tell a difference in my overall cognitive ability when it comes to being on meetings, recording podcasts, doing coaching calls. And I have a discount code to share with the listeners of Next Level Minds, because I know each and every one of you listening are working to get to a next level. So I'm sure Magic Mind could help. And the code is NextLevelMinds20. To use it, go to magicmind.co and then enter in NextLevelMinds20 as your code, and you'll get 20% off your order. That said, I know we're talking about getting to a next level. So there's another component of this, though. You're getting to that next level with your income, but you also need to live below your means, right? This is where people can get into trouble because they take this advice of increasing their income. So, they start out making 60 grand a year, then they're making 80, then 100, 150, 200, so on. And now they start spending the same amount of money that they're making, and now they're not able to save any money, right? I know some people that are making almost $600,000 that are living paycheck to paycheck because they don't follow this simple rule of living below your means, right? And so avoid the shiny object syndrome, right? Don't go buy that new car when you make your first six figures. Don't get a bigger house right away. Don't go on these extravagant vacations every month, right? Continue to live below your means. My wife and I, we pretty much plus or minus a few dollars here and there because, we go on nicer trips now, and I've invested a little bit more money into clothes, things like that. But we basically live on the same amount that we did when we were making like slightly above entry-level salaries. But thankfully, both our salaries, especially from a sales perspective, which I am, have increased over the last 4 or 5 plus years, but we're still living on slightly above, our entry-level salaries that we got in, 2018, 2019. And now that the delta between what we're able to save every month has gone up and up and up because we're continuing to live below our means, right? And so a couple rules of thumb here that I have when it comes to living below your means is if you're renting or you're getting a mortgage, I think it's very important to make sure that your monthly mortgage or rent payment is no more than 20 to 30% of your after-tax income. So your mortgage or your rent should be between 20 to 30% of your after-tax income. From a car perspective, I'm a big believer of really just driving a car that's paid off. I drive a Toyota Camry right now, and it's a 2013, right? Gets me from point A to point B. Fantastic car. Great gas mileage. I mean, it looks pretty new. I've kept good care of it. But for those of you who've listened, you've probably heard me say this. I really, really want a brand new, lifted Toyota 4Runner or a truck. That would cost me about $60,000. And yeah, I could afford a monthly payment on that if I wanted to. But why would I spend my money on a depreciating asset, right? I'll get that car one day when, I could easily at the snap of a finger pay for that in cash and it's not going to affect me. Or when I have some assets that are paying me $400, $500, $600, $700 a month, and I can use that asset cash flow to pay for that car. But it's all these shiny object syndromes, right? Don't go get the nicer house. Don't go lease the car. Continue to live below your means, and it's going to pay off in the long run. And now the last thing I want to preface here is don't hurt yourself, right? I mean, don't go eat ramen noodles every night. You still have to enjoy life. Right. And for me, I have 2 or 3 vehicles that I really don't mind spending money on. Number one, that's health. I buy a couple $100 worth of supplements every month, protein, vitamins, creatine, pre-workout. That adds up because I'm using high quality products. My wife also buys things as well from a supplement perspective. So, it adds up. Clothes, I think it's extremely important to look professional. So, I don't mind spending $100 on a nice golf polo or, a nice suit, right? We just had the guy from OMJ Clothing on my podcast. Great suit that I got from there. And so things that are going to help me look more professional, I don't mind spending money on. Travel, spending money on travel, right? So pick maybe 2 or 3 things that's okay, you know what? I don't mind spending money on these things, but then avoid the shiny object on the other things, right? The higher mortgage, the car payment, those things will come. Right now, you just need to focus on living below your means and stacking up as much money as possible so you can have a massive foundation later in life. That said, really my rule of thumb is to save at least 10 to 20% of your money per year, right? That should be fairly easy to do if you're living below your means. And if you have a budget, like we talked about at the very beginning of the episode, and you're not saving 10 to 20% of your money per year, you can audit your spending, which is a great thing about a budget. You can look at how much you spend on groceries and on going out to eat and on alcohol and on random stuff and on, golf and this and that, and say, you know what? Maybe I could go out to eat, one less time per week. And you know what? Those 3 rounds of golf that I played this past month, how about we just do, one next month and maybe go to the driving range 2 or 3 times, right? That'll save me about $100. And if I go out to eat one less time per week, that'll save me another $200 or $300 per month. And what else is going on here? Ooh, groceries. Okay, well, did I really need this? Okay, well, maybe I should start looking at some sales, right? And as you start to kind of fine-tooth comb, if you will, your budget, you'll be able to find $200, $300, $400, $500+ of extra savings. And that's the beauty of having a budget, so you know where your money's going. And the unique thing too is, as I talked about earlier, is if you continue to increase your income and you continue to live below your means, you may start out only saving 5-10% of your money per year. But if you continue to increase your income and live below your means, now that delta is getting wider and wider and wider. And now you're saving, 10%, 15, 20, 30, 40. Fast forward 10 years later, you're increasing your income, you're living below your means still, and now you're able to save, 40 to 50% of your income, right? And that's going to pay significantly down the road in a positive way. Now, the question is, okay, you have this income increase, you're living below your means, you're saving 10 to 20% of your income per year. What are you going to do with this money? Well, for me, I like to have a savings account, emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Now, a couple rules of thumb. When I was just living by myself, when my wife Jacqueline was still at Clemson, because I finished school in 2018, she finished in 2019. So when it was just me up in Charlotte before she moved up here, I only had about 3 months of expenses, just because it was basically just me for a year. But when we got married and, now we have a mortgage and a dog, like now that emergency fund is, I think, about 10 months worth of expenses. So, if you're single, you can get away with 3 months worth of expenses. If you're in a serious relationship, I'd do about 6 months. And then if you have a house, dog, especially if you have kids, I would get at least like 10 to 12 months worth of expenses in that emergency fund. 2, I love having a high yield savings account because it's going to pay you around 4 to 6% interest. And I personally like to use Ally Bank because they give you the opportunity to create buckets. So let's just say you put $1,000 in there. You can have different buckets where you want that money to go. So I have a bucket for travel, a bucket for gifts, a bucket for home expenses, a bucket for taxes at the end of the year, and then a couple other buckets in there as well. And so I like it because you can kind of like itemize your savings. And so especially when it comes to like Christmas time and birthdays, I have a bucket for that. And so when Christmas time comes, like I'm not really using any of my week or my monthly budget. It's all coming out of that high yield savings account bucket there. We also had our AC that we had to replace out of nowhere, which honestly wasn't the best thing to have to do, but thankfully we had a high yield savings account Ally bucket of home expenses. And so that expense came up and we were fortunately able to lock in at a great price because we had the ability to pay for the entire unit in cash versus having to do a payment plan, and we'd have had to pay more for it in the end of the day, all that stuff. So I love the high yield savings account for a number of reasons, but Ally Bank has a great one for creating itemized buckets. So you got the savings account for emergency fund, you got the high yield savings. Now let's talk about investing. If you're a W-2 employee, and you can have a 401k too if you're a business owner. There's certain ways to set that up. So I would look that up on your own, but I would max out your 401k, whatever situation you're in, to do that, because that's going to be able to deduct that from your taxes. because you're reducing your taxable income when you invest pre-tax dollars. And if you're at a good company, they're going to match that pretty significantly. Also, I like having an HSA, which is a health savings account. Not all companies offer this, but most big ones do. I like it because it's essentially a separate account just for health-related expenses. But here's the cool thing. Every dollar you put in there, if you're married, I believe you can do up to $8,300 a year. Every dollar you put in there up to that amount is tax deductible. You can also invest your HSA dollars in a health savings account brokerage. So you could put some of that money into stocks. It grows, and you can take that money out tax-free without having to pay capital gains on it, as long as you use the money for a health-related expense. And actually, more and more things are becoming HSA eligible. Like you can buy cold plunge off HSA. There's a lot of saunas and spas that you can use HSA for. You can use the Whoop fitness band for that. I know there's some gyms that take HSA. And then, of course, doctor's visits, surgeries, health expenses that come up. You can use your HSA for that as well. Like I got some lab work done about a year ago, honestly, just because I wanted to see like all my levels from like my testosterone to just basic things. I haven't done a blood test like that in a while, so just kind of wanted to see where I'm at. And it was a couple $100 to do it. But I was able to use my HSA card to pay for that. So it's pretty unique what you can do. So you got 401k, HSA, and then stocks, right? I personally like to invest into ETFs, which are exchange traded funds, which are essentially funds that track various things in the stock market. And I like to invest in ETFs that track the S&P 500, which has had, over the last 100 years, has had a 10.64% return. So it's pretty unique. I like to invest in those ETFs. And historically speaking, those are going to return about 10.64% per year. And it's kind of a slow and steady wins the day. A slow and steady wins the race investment game. You know, if you started out and you graduated, you're 23 years old, you put $1,000 into an ETF that tracked the S&P 500, and let's just say you were able to stretch a little bit and invest $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month into this for the next 27 years. Based on the past returns of 10.64% over the last 100 years, you'd have about $1.6 million by the time you turn 50 years old. So again, slow and steady wins the race mentality there. But, you know, let's just say you were able to invest more and more every year. So you start out with 12, then you increase your income. Now you can do 15, then 20, then, you know, you're in your mid 30s. You're able to invest like 50 to 100 grand a year. Right now, that 1.6 million is going to be in like the $5, $6 to $10 million range because compounding interest, right? And so, challenge you to do some research on your own of like what ETFs are going to work best for you. But really, a simple Google search of top 5 ETFs on Google. Click on, you know, an Investopedia link, or even just watch a couple YouTube videos, and you'll be able to find some that do that. And very easy to set up. You can set it up through Charles Schwab. You can set it up through Morgan Stanley. You can set it up through Fidelity, right? There's all these websites that you can set up a brokerage account to be able to invest your money into the stock market. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to do so. And then after you kind of, for me, after I get, you know, the stocks where I want to be, which I'm very close to actually having it where I want to be, I suggest that you buy assets like real estate, things that are going to pay you cash flow, right? One of my goals is to turn this current house that I'm living in into a rental property, which will cash flow probably about $500 to $600 a month, and then use that $500 or $600 a month in cash flow that I'm getting, right? This is passive income coming in from a rental property, and then using that to get myself a new 4Runner or a new truck, and using this rental income to pay for that $500 to $600 a month car payment on this nice car. That way I'm not having to use any of my quote unquote earned income. So that's a lot about the investment side of things. Like I said, I would definitely challenge you to look into this, just because every multimillionaire that I've met has invested into either the stock market or real estate. Actually, from a real estate perspective, I believe 97% of multimillionaires have real estate somewhere in their investment portfolio. So definitely a viable vehicle there based on, that study that was done. But really the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to finances is really just have a reason for wanting to become wealthy in life. Is it a lifestyle thing? Is it a impact thing? Is it a providing for your family thing? Like, don't just want to make money to make money. Why do you actually want to make money? Why do you want to become wealthy? And figure that out and use that as a driving force, because becoming wealthy is hard, right? They call it the 1% for a reason. If it was easy, there wouldn't be any 1%. Everybody would be wealthy, right? It's a lot of work. It's going to take a long time. You have to make a lot of sacrifices. But if you have a deep reason why you want to become wealthy, that's going to drive you on those tough days. So that's all I wanted to share. If you have any questions, hit me up on Instagram, Chris Chap. Like I said, if you need help with a budget or setting it up, message me as well. Just say budget, and I'll try to get back to you within 3 to 4 business days. I get a lot of DMs, so sometimes it's hard to get back, but would definitely love to help, especially when it comes to setting up budgets. So let's run through these quickly, and y'all can get through the rest of your day knowing more about finances. So quick recap: budget your money, increase your income, live below your means, aim to save at least 10 to 20% of your income per year, invest that money into emergency fund, high yield savings, and the stock market, and then have a reason for wanting to become wealthy in life. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Next Level Minds. As mentioned, our vision and mission is to impact over 1 million people by helping them reach a next level. So share this episode with a family member, friend, or colleague. And thank you all for tuning in. Let's have a great week ahead.